Exciting weekend of college football. I think Labor Day is probably the most exciting outside of the bowl season, and now we have a 12-team playoff coming in 2024. I mean, it's just a plethora of college football, whether it's FCS, BCS. You get a chance to see some teams come out and really perform. Go ahead and subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. We're talking Auburn football. And, just got a few takeaways, excuse me, from the Auburn versus Alabama A&M football game. Down in the comment section, I want you to leave, like, what was your biggest takeaway just from college football in general? I thought some teams, really didn't perform as well as I thought they would have. I thought Florida kind of laid an egg against Miami. I thought the Texas A&M and Notre Dame game, kind of led up to its billing. I was really intrigued by the Georgia versus Clemson game. Georgia getting off to a slow start, only to go ahead and dominate Clemson in that particular football game. There were some others that we just don't have time to talk about right now. You also look at how Ole Miss thrashed Furman, how Arkansas just rolled over Arkansas Pine Bluff. Now my thing against with Arkansas is I just want Arkansas to keep that same energy because they had a lot of arrogant stuff going on in that game, waving at the cheerleaders when you score a touchdown, things like that, which, I mean, I'm fine with. I mean, I get it. It's college football. You want to celebrate and things like that. But I just want you to be able to do that in that same arrogant fashion once this season gets a little bit tighter. But we got some takeaways from the Auburn versus Alabama A&M game, which was a very interesting game, especially when I had the opportunity to go back and look at the football game. I think Auburn did some things particularly well, got 5 takeaways as to how what Auburn was able to accomplish in a very short period of time. I mean, the game was abbreviated because of the mercy rule, especially in the second half, but Auburn really didn't have the ball that long in this game. We'll talk about that some in the video. Number one, the biggest takeaway, we've talked about Peyton Thorne at nauseum over the offseason. We thought that Peyton Thorne, wasn't particularly a great decision maker, especially at critical points of the game. Good news is he didn't make those mistakes. The bad news against Alabama A&M, the bad news is he wasn't really put in situations where he had to be analytical of the opposing defense. He didn't have to do much as far as check down goes. He didn't have to do a lot of thinking. Auburn's offense and talent on offense was just superiorly talented over Alabama A&M. I think Auburn would have been able to do this against a few teams, maybe even a couple of teams in the Power 5. I think Auburn is that talented at the wide receiver position. You look at Peyton Thorne, even with the offseason criticism, had the best game of his Auburn career. 322 yards in the first half and 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Had a couple of drops. Otherwise, a pretty flawless performance. I'd say impressive. Now, all the action, though, for the offense as a whole was in like a really short span of time. And we're going to get into that as we talk about the receivers' performance. But I still want to see. I'm not saying that I'm not impressed with Thorne's performance, because I was. I mean, 322 yards in the first half against any team is absolutely impressive. The confidence that he showed, I think the offensive line did a great job of protecting him, especially on the perimeter of the offensive line. The offensive tackles did a great job with that. Now the next step comes. I want to see the decision making when, let's just say, Auburn is down by 10 points right before halftime and they're trying to sneak in a score. Or in the third quarter, because we all know the third quarter is a very transitional part of any football game. How can he handle that stretch with not being able to just go out there, drop back, and throw a fade route or go out and throw an out route and it just be wide open, having to really decipher what the different defensive schematics are looking like. I think we don't want to get, for a lack of better way of putting it, we don't want to get too drunk or too high off of Peyton Thorne's performance in this game, because there are going to be some challenges. There's going to be a lot more pressure. There's going to be a lot more talented cornerbacks that are going to be able to possibly match up with the skill set of Auburn's new receivers and some of the old receivers. I don't think Cam Brown got a lot of action. Camden Brown didn't get a lot of action in this game, but I want to see Peyton Thorne under duress. So I'm still on the fence as to whether, you know, Peyton Thorne has righted the wrongs of 2023, because I got to see some pressure on him. And I think we're going to see that in the Cal game. California is a lot more talented team, even though they did struggle a little bit in week one against a menial opponent, but they did pull it out. They do have the type of talent that can challenge this Auburn offense and put them in more situational play calling. Maybe it put them in situations Peyton Thorne has to check down or check plays at the line of scrimmage. I want to see more of that from Peyton Thorne. All right, so number 2, all new wide receivers at Auburn had 30 yards or more. Malcolm Simmons, Perry Thompson, Keandre Lambert-Smith, Cam Coleman all had over 60 yards. Now, I like that. I think that's pretty impressive. And I think that was appropriate for the talent set that Auburn was competing against. But here's my problem, though. And see, a lot of y'all get on here thinking I'm trying to hate and, you know, hey, just take the win and be. Yeah, I'm happy. I think they did a great job. They did what they were supposed to do against the opponent that they played against. Here's what I want to see, though, because I'm always up for it, up to see these guys challenge themselves. Most of the yards were on one play. Now, this is absolutely not to take away from anything that these receivers did. It went just about the way I thought it would go. I thought Alabama A&M, obviously an inferior opponent, it actually went the way I needed it to go, the way I wanted it to go, because I didn't want these receivers to struggle under any level against Alabama A&M. And no disrespect to Alabama A&M, I think, they played with poise, and I think they played with the confidence that they could play based on their talent level. But I want to see week 2 against California. I want to see a little bit more. Yeah, and I think you probably will see a little bit more from a game plan standpoint, a little bit more intermediate passing, some more dig routes. I think you will start to see how impactful these wide receivers can be against a little bit more competition. I think California, obviously, Power 5 football team, entering into the ACC conference. I don't know how that looks, especially with you're on the West Coast, but you're in the Atlantic Coast Conference. I mean, that's another question for another day. But even still, you compete in a conference that's champions has the opportunity to be in the college football playoff. So that says a lot there. And I think the Auburn wide receivers did show that they can create a lot of stress for a secondary, and especially in the interior. Create a lot of mismatches with linebackers, create a lot of mismatches with those nickelbacks, really test the boundary and field cornerbacks and cause a lot of duress. Maybe similar, and I'm going to make a bold statement, maybe even better than the wide receiver core from LSU in 20. I mean, Auburn's got a lot of weapons at that wide receiver room, and it's going to be super interesting to see how Hugh Freeze utilizes those guys moving forward. Now, number 3, I think the defense was intense the whole game. They didn't give up a lot of dumb play, because, when you look at these games where, there's a not high consequence, you're blowing them out, but they played with intensity throughout the game. And I think that's a big shout to DJ Durkin and how he has prepared these guys and how he takes pride in the intensity of this defense. Although they played very intense, I think they were a little vulnerable and a little bit more vulnerable in the pass game than I would like. Alabama A&M had 204 yards passing. Cornelius Brown had a respectable 13 for 27 attempts at 182 yards. He didn't turn the ball over. And that's another thing. Auburn did not create any turnovers. I think that's something that Auburn is going to look for, especially in this California game, because there are going to be some games down the stretch where Auburn is going to have to flip the football field. It's going to have to change some trajectory of the game by turnovers or by key stops or by fumble recoveries, maybe even for a touchdown to make the difference in a game. Number 4, Auburn's defensive line and defense was very active in many ways. A lot of guys, just like you saw on the depth chart, they had, and this guy stars and or this other guy stars. They had pretty much the whole defensive line. I mean, the whole defensive personnel that were listed as either starters or probable starters, or we don't know. But they didn't disappoint. They were very active, and they did a very good job in this game. They gave up a little bit. They missed a few assignments, and I think that's something that can be corrected with film study. But, overall, pretty impressive. And 5, last but not least, this was a big portion of Auburn's game plan is protecting the running backs. I think, obviously with some pieces of the running game missing, you have Jerquez Hunter, Damari Austin, Jeremiah Cobb, I think, and Sean Jackson and a couple other guys. You have 4 core running backs that you need to have healthy down the stretch. And to risk the pot. Now, you did want to get them some reps, but you also didn't want to risk injury in a game that just wasn't, consequential. But to stretch fall camp, you got to get these guys in the game, get them some touches, get them some nicks from another team, get that in-game experience, and probably utilize them a little bit more against California. And as the weeks progress, as you start to talk about Arkansas, Oklahoma, Georgia, that stretch, Missouri, but you got to keep those guys healthy. And even in the limited roles that they played, you had no running back for Auburn that had more than 4 carries. And as a unit, this team still produced 177 yards, and that includes Peyton Thorne, who was active in the run-pass option. I'm really looking forward to seeing the progression. I want to see these guys against some competition, some more physical competition, some more athletic competition, and experience competition. When you look at teams, how they've utilized the transfer portal, and you start to even the playing field there, I just say, hey, just strap your chin straps, and let's get this Auburn football season going. Got California next week. Auburn opened up as a 12.5 favorite with the over-under of a little bit over 50 points. Let's see how you bet there. Very impressive first week. Like this video, comment, and subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. Get very active in the comment section. What do you think was the defining moment of this season opening game? In the Deep South, college football is king, and on the plains of Auburn, the battle cry is war.